حصلت زي حكى لي واحد حصلت زي استقبلناهم أمناهم آويناهم لواجبنا ليل النحن نعقل الفكرة ضبط الشايل
يا بالعيش أحرار يا للنور رجال.
I hope my outcries of political frustration once sounded like the final note in a symphony of tears. I hope my laments of affection are met with open hearts.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Tea Time and Wanisa. Today we're going to be talking about the issues going on in our home country of Sudan. This issue is really deeply personal and important to address for us because obviously it affects us, it affects our families, and so we really felt like it was important to share with you guys our thoughts, our feelings, and kind of experiences of people around us as well.
Yeah, so we wanted to, this has been on our mind a lot for the past couple months because of everything that's going on and because of just the different relationships that we have with Sudan and how we're trying to stay connected, but not knowing how to do that, how we are trying to be supportive and not knowing how to do that. And we just felt that if we are constantly having these conversations and these like internal struggles that others might be as well.
Okay, so I think there's a general consensus, a feeling of helplessness, a feeling of, sadness. It's like we don't know what to do. We don't know how to help. We don't know how to express the emotions that we have. And this, I know somebody said this to me, is the feeling of guilt. It's like I'm continuing to live my privileged life away from Sudan, away from the suffering, and just observing this from far away doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
So I know for me, I'm personally struggling with all of those feelings as well, in addition to, the personal feelings that I have having relatives and family being detained. My uncle was a political prisoner in Sudan for over a month and a half. We didn't know where he was. They continuously told us they were moving him from one holding station to the next.
Yeah.
And with the information that I know about Sudan and holding cells and holding areas, they're literally places of torture. There were chambers of torture, and for a month and a half, we didn't know where he was. They weren't telling us any information at all.
Yeah.
And then they started to lie about, okay, well, we're moving him to this location. We're moving him to this location. He didn't have his medications. I honestly was worried sick. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's
just not being able to do anything.
Not being able to do
anything. That is the hardest thing.
Not being able to do anything and just waiting.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you hear news of people being tortured to death. And that's another reality that I had to think about as well. It's like, what if? And
so I was going to the grocery store one day and I ran into a friend's mom right outside. And Assalamualaikum, how are you, blah, blah. And then she kind of just dove into Sudan. I could tell that she was very heavy-hearted and she just wanted to speak about it. And so we literally stood outside the grocery store for 20 minutes discussing this. And it was the day after the news came out of the torture that Ahmed al-Khair, Allah yarhamu, went through. And so she was saying that she's kind of been frozen for a couple days, and this was kind of the cherry on top, what happened, because she felt really helpless because she didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And she was saying that she was kind of just glued to her TV and like talking to her family about what's going on. But she also, like, this feeling of hopelessness kind of took her over. She was like, the only reason I'm in the grocery store right now is because it was her daughter's birthday and she was getting her a cake. She was like, the pharmacy has been calling me for 3 days to come and get my medication, and I have not had the energy to get outside of my house other than to do like mandatory things like going to work and coming home. And I asked her, I was like, how is this for you? How are you dealing with this? And what do you see as the future? And I think she was saying that one of the reasons this triggered her is because this is kind of her second time going through this. She was like, these torture stories are not new to me. She was like, I know people personally who have gone through this. I know people who have gone through very similar things.
Yeah.
And she was just, and on the part of like, where do you see this going? She was saying, honestly, like, I want to be hopeful, but it's not in me right now. As Sudani people, I mean, this is a generalization, but we tend to try to focus on the positive side. Like, because of like things that we have gone through in our lives throughout the generations, like Sudani people focus on the good. Like, even under terrible conditions, they focus on the good. And I think that takes away from dealing with trauma, right? And there are so many things that are unspoken in our communities that should be spoken about. And so I remember I talked to a family member about this after I saw my friend's mom. And I know that he has had, personally, he's been tortured for various reasons and under different, like, whatever conditions. And I was asking him, I was like, why have you never spoken about this? And he was saying, why would I? He was like, people have gone through worse things. He was like, who am I to come and be like, oh, woe is me, when different things have happened to me? And I feel like this is a common sentiment. I mean, within the Sudani experience and within Black experience, is we kind of tend to just like internalize things.
Yeah, I think Black bodies are meant to represent strength.
Yeah.
And I think people constantly appreciate us for our ability to endure, and that doesn't leave us much room to talk about traumas and emotions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like we're expected to be able to handle it.
And if you look at different communities that have gone through like genocides and traumas and this and that, like, depending on the communities, it is well documented, it is constantly talked about, and it is a reminder that such things cannot continue to happen.
Yeah.
But I feel like
for generations.
For generations.
Like, take the Holocaust survivors. Their families continuously talk about the torture that they endured, and they remind us for that, and they're still speaking up on those issues now.
And that's so powerful, because it is like, yes, it is one of the most well-documented atrocities that has happened in human history, but you have to talk about it. Yeah. Whereas within the Sudani community, people are like, why would I talk about it?
Yeah.
Why do I need to talk about it? Like, it's an understood thing. But it's like, if you're not talking about it, and if you are focusing on the positive, that is probably...
And that's the thing. How is it so trivialized? In their minds, it's trivialized, it's normalized for this to be part of a Sudani experience. Like,
and then you get people just frozen, and then they unfreeze, and they are like, okay.
Carry on.
Yeah.
Because even when I was in Sudan, during the protests were happening, I was speaking to my cousins, and they were like, Adi, like, it's so normal for you to get detained and you're out in the streets, and then you go back to doing what you were doing, Adi. Yeah. When do you process that? When do you process because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who are detained who actually think they might die while they're in detainment. I don't think they know they're going to walk back out and see their families. Because I've heard stories of people who are detained and there's blood all over the floor. There are people screaming, crying. Yeah. There are women who, when they're detained, are sexually harassed or threatened with rape. These are not things you just walk out of and carry on and go back to the streets. Like, and people need to realize that too. It's like the stigma of, why aren't you going out there? Why aren't you protesting? The whole country isn't out. Look at Egypt. Look at blah, blah, blah. The whole country was out. And it's like, okay, but this is the real fear that they feel, and you need to acknowledge that as well, because it is a generational issue. This isn't the first time it's happened.
مية المية شيا لينا يا زي الزينة سودانية مية المية شيا لينا يا زي
I think, you know, like again, going back to the story, you seeing this relative in the grocery store, there's something important about just being able to share and express. And I think for me, and part of the reason why tea time and wellness is important in general, is this is a means of survival for me. Like, I feel like I have to be able to share in order to fully live my life. Like, I can't live closed off. I can't live not sharing. I can't do it. It's too heavy, and it physically weighs on you. And so to be able to just have an open conversation and talk about what's happening and feel safe in doing so, and feel safe in talking about my feelings in the comfort of this home, you know, is I think a privilege, but also for me necessary. And everybody is kind of expressing their emotions towards the Sudan issue in different ways. So, you know, like the artists and the musicians that are
It's
releasing.
so amazing.
What?
Yeah.
We're so talented.
Yeah. Like,
I'm including
constantly
myself.
mind blown.
I'm including myself, like I'm out here doing something. I'm really talented. I mean, no, but for real,
Yeah.
what? The music has been so inspiring. The artists and the way that they're expressing themselves is internationally recognized, and it's like, where are you guys coming from? It's beautiful.
I feel like I struggle with that guilt a lot of, okay, why am I so like affected by this when I'm not on the ground, when I'm not like feeling this and feeling that. And I think it's just feeling that community and realizing that there are different ways to participate, there are different ways to engage, and also just having like this episode in Tea Time in Winnesa is mutual interaction.
Yeah.
Like, I am opening up here and saying things that I've been struggling with, and I want others, I would love if others do the same, so that it's a place of engagement and a place of interaction and a community where we can talk about important things and not feel that alone. Because I know one day I was like dealing with all this, and I call you and I'm like, shit, like I'm kind of just sitting in my car right now and I don't know what to do or how to deal with this, and it's not just me.
It's not, And so this is important too, because it's like, let's break this generational curse.
Yeah.
Where we just have to internalize all our traumas. And part of the reason you probably are affected so deeply, and you know, me as well, is like because this has happened to people who are still alive, people who we care and love about. And our mind goes so far imagining what they've been able to, what they've endured. I don't even know how to openly talk to them about it. It's like a wall. You know, like right now, my uncle, alhamdulillah, was finally released after a month and a half. And I want to ask him what happened in there. And it's like, bro. And another reason why the diaspora is engaging in the Sudan revolts, you know, protests all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, in the United States alone, there have been people in several states who have organized protests and have done so successfully, and we see footage of protests in London and all over Europe.
Amazing.
And it is amazing, and it's like there's something so extremely powerful in togetherness, and it makes people feel like, you know, I'm not alone. I don't know how this is going to end, and so I think this is a continuous conversation. I don't think this covered even, you know, like half
a drop in the ocean.
Literally a drop in the ocean. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to do, and there's also like I don't know what to do. I'm trying to do the best with the resources that I have, with the community that I know. There are people all over the country and the world who are protesting and organizing marches. The Washington D.C. march was massive. Was
and there's
huge.
another one coming up.
And there is another one coming up. And everybody's been really organized and doing their best to be together. And the power of togetherness, I think, is evident. But it's like,
and
we're
I
just
think
doing our best.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly on point. I think we kind of just need to continue strengthening our community, whether that is our local community or our global community, and create a way that we can have these conversations, that we can interact and engage in one another, whether it be in marches, whether it be in dialogue, whether it be in processing. And this is a way to do that, and I hope people will take advantage of that. I want to know more about what people are feeling when it comes to this.
Yes.
I feel like we covered, like you said, just very not surface, but minimal things, and we kind of delved into our feelings and what we've been experiencing kind of in our interactions with others and in our interactions with ourselves. And so I think it's really important to hear from you guys. Like, we need you, and we would appreciate it if you interact, comment, message us, call us, anything. And we want to know how you're dealing with this, what you would like to do, what you think the role of the diaspora is in Sudan. What, if you are in Sudan, what do you need for us to do? And yeah, that's kind of
how can we be of assistance?
Yeah.
And is there something that we could do that we haven't done? Let us know your feelings and thoughts. Thank you guys so much.